Hi guys, welcome to Game On. I'm Matt.
I'm Justin. This is a show all about tabletop gaming, from RPGs to board games and everything in between. Today's video, we are pulling a Peter Jackson and making something that deserves to only be one video into three things. The only thing that's different about us is that we don't have a budget.
That's true. We don't have a budget. We don't have any formal training, as if you couldn't tell that already. And, but I will say, by cutting this into three segments, it makes three shortish videos out of one unbearably long video.
Yes, this is part three. You should see part one or part two. I'll have part one and part two up here. But this is a video. Beard Clipper, who also makes videos on YouTube, that he is asking how to make a non-horror RPG scary, or just make a game scary in general.
Yeah, so he wrote us a question asking how to add fear as an element into games.
Yeah.
And we've been making a good faith attempt to answer that question with varying degrees of success. And this is our third crack at it.
Yeah, this is our Empire Strikes... Or no, another Empire Strikes Back. This is our Return of the Jedi.
This is not going well.
How do they all go?
Bring in the pygmy teddy bears. No. Return of the Jedi. We're gonna take this home.
Okay.
This third one I want to talk about sort of building paranoia and suspicion in a game.
Okay.
Because that speaks to a larger theme of anxiety and anticipation, like the fear of the unknown. But if you can get players to start looking at each other with mistrust, you're taking away one of the foundations of security and comfort,
right,
in an RPG, which is the feeling of community amongst the players, right? They're a team.
You know, that's why The Thing is such a good movie, because everybody's
one of my favorites.
Everybody's a suspect,
potentially,
whether they know it or not.
Right, exactly. And yeah, can they even know if they're a bad guy?
Yeah.
They don't. You don't know if they can know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that is a variation on sort of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers kind of thing. There's lots of horror stories, movies, books that are based on that concept. And building the fear or the paranoia that something like that might be going on in your game. Driving a wedge between characters and making each player feel isolated is a great way to instill sort of that anxiety and fear element into your game. Now, it's tricky to do because you can't be too obvious about making somebody an agent of the GM, like co-opting a player to work against the rest of the party. And in fact, you don't even have to do it. You just have to put the idea in your players' heads that it might be going on. And they will start looking at each other across the table and analyzing every move and every word that each other makes to try and figure out whether that's happening.
What you do is you write a little on a little strip of paper, and you give everyone it.
Absolutely.
And then you say no one's allowed. Don't let anyone know what it says, and all of them just say hi with a winky face or something.
No, you can say one of the others is a secret traitor to your group.
That works too.
And then you write the same note on everyone's. Obviously, you want to be a little bit more creative than that, but that's basically the idea, right? You're planting the seed of doubt in your players' minds, such that they aren't just looking at you as the GM across the table about what you're going to do to screw them over and betray them and whatnot, right? Like, obviously, that's part of the game, and you're setting up the antagonists and the obstacles in front of them. But if you can plant in their heads that their own fellow players might be working against them too, man, just watch the tension ratchet up at the table. There is one key element to this, though. You're trying to engender a feeling of mistrust and tension. You want to preserve that, and you cannot, under almost any circumstances, let it erupt from suspicion into violence. You do not want your players attacking one another. You don't want them acting on their suspicions. You just want them stewing about them. Mm-hmm. So this is where you kind of have to, as a GM, be very delicate in the way that you handle this, and you kind of step on the gas and pump the brake, and then you find you're doing a little bit of a tight wire act on that. And if you feel like there's a player who's been pushed to the edge and is gonna snap and sort of act out their suspicions or their mistrust, or maybe somebody is absolutely convinced that somebody else is a traitor and they're gonna give them their due.
Yeah.
Right? That's the kind of thing that you have to sort of squash down and keep to a minimum, or preferably to not let it happen at all.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to create actual resentment or animosity between your players. This is all supposed to be in-game stuff. But I'll tell you, if you have two players who actually come to blows, even through their characters, one of them is going to, at least one of them, is going to hold a grudge after that, right? Because whoever loses that fight is going to be humiliated. Potentially their character is going to be harmed or killed. There is going to be ill will at your table that will live far past the actual game.
Yeah.
So you don't want to have that stuff erupt and lose control of it. So use the paranoia and suspicion and the fear of betrayal element with discretion and with delicacy, because it can spiral out of control. It's tricky, but if you do it right, it's pretty good. But that does speak to what we were talking about before, about the sort of the unknown being the key to building fear in any shape or form.
Yep.
I mean, the perfect examples is like what are the scariest movies? The scariest movies are the ones where you don't see the monster for a really long time, right? Mm-hmm. Because your brain makes things scarier than what they end up being when they're revealed to you.
Oh, yeah.
So, anything that you do in a game, like as a GM, anything that you present to your players while you're building the tension and it's hiding around the next corner and they haven't seen it yet and they know it's coming, but they don't know when it's coming and they don't know what it'll be when it gets here. Their imagination will make that potentially the scariest, most horrible thing that they've ever encountered in a game.
Oh, yeah.
Until it shows up. And then it almost certainly won't be.
Yeah.
Right? Because only one thing can be the most horrible, scary, terrible thing that you've ever encountered in a game. What are the odds that you're going to have come up with that thing?
Yeah.
Right? But if you hide it, it still could be. And your players will wonder if the thing that they're about to see is going to be the worst thing they've ever seen.
Uh-huh.
So hold that feeling as long as you can. Like, draw it out.
I'm not the one who came up with the idea. I've heard other people say it, but once you stat the monster, they'll find a way to kill it.
Of course.
But you can't stat their fears. Like, you can't stat what they're gonna.
That's
what
right.
They think is in the shadows.
Yeah. Once a monster has stats, it's just a question of math.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes a math problem at that point.
Yeah. The Tarrasque in D&D is big, scary Godzilla-like monster, but people kill it because it's got the stats.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And once a thing has stats, then people start approaching it like it is killable.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's why in Call of Cthulhu, like, the big gods don't have stats.
No.
Because you just can't kill them.
No. and the best horror-themed games understand that if you want to make something unapproachable, you do not want to put numbers on a page, right? Because even the biggest numbers you can come up with in the scale of the game are still mathematically defeatable.
Mm-hmm.
The odds might be 1,000 to 1, but they're still known odds.
We can figure out a way.
Yes, for
In
sure.
a million ways.
Yes.
A million years.
And this is something about gamers. If you present an opponent in a combat type situation, the irrational optimism of the party of gamers will convince themselves, hey, we've been in a million fights in a million games and we always win.
Yeah.
Or at least we always find a way, or we always find a way to survive, or whatever it is. They always think it's like that scene from Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah.
No, I'm not telling you that there's a chance. And you don't want to tell your players that there's a chance, because if they think there's a chance, they will take it.
They'll take it, yeah.
And you don't always want them to fight everything, and you don't always want them to run towards the monster. Sometimes you want them to run away.
Yep.
And if the thing has an air of mystery and unknown terror, like it's too big to even sort of contemplate what this thing is, they're much more likely to run, which is the realistic reaction to something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will feel fear. If they're running, it's because they're really afraid of what's going to happen if they stop running.
Yeah.
That lets you know you've succeeded in scaring your players, right? If they turn and fight, then what are you going to do? You're just going to wail on them until they get the message. And that's not scary. That's just frustrating.
Yeah. It's just
So-
time consuming.
Yeah. That's just working out the math problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unknown. Preserve the unknown, and the fear will follow. So
Yeah.
that would be my parting words for this type of idea. Whether it was written to be scary, or whether it was a Beard Clipper's question that was, what if you just have a regular game that you want to sort of modify into a more horror themed or frightening scenario? Amp up the unknown, amp up the anticipation, amp up the psychological terror, because physical terror is just not scary to gamers.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, that's part 3.
It was part 3. No pygmy teddy bears. I don't know if it was a letdown. Hopefully not. But after you've seen all 3 videos,
There's a trap. Let us know what you guys think is your favorite out of the trio.
Sure. Let us
Or
know
the-
your favorite. Let us know if there are other elements of engendering fear and creating tension in a game that we haven't talked about. Tell us if you've tried some of the things we have talked about and say they don't work, and quit telling people to do them.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Yeah. And give us more questions too.
And click that like button. Leave a comment.
Yes.
Hit the subscribe button.
Well, the comments would be where you would do the thing.
The algorithm likes it.
Yes. We must keep the all-powerful algorithm happy.
Correct. But I thank you guys very much for watching.
Well, I thank you too. It's not just him. No, seriously, guys. Thank you very
Justin.
much. Thank you very much. And thank you, Beard Clipper, for the question.
Yes.
All right.
And as always, game on.